Today we're going to be creating a little picture of a whale. Looks like he's swimming around in water. We need some watercolor paper. We need a little template of a whale. You can make one up and cut it out. You need some paintbrushes. You need some water jugs. You need some white ink, or you can use acrylic paints for that. And you need some watercolor paints. You need some tissue just to pat some of the watercolor paint up. Now, first of all, we're going to use something circular and a pencil to trace the circle. Make this fairly light because you don't want it to be standing out when you do your watercolor over the top. The next thing you do is figure out where you're going to put your little whale. Once you've positioned him and you're happy with where he is, you trace around the outside of it. It doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to be painting over this in a greyish colour anyway. So once he's traced, you then can look at an image of whales and add some features that whales might have. So I've just got those little gill things underneath and a little bit of detailing in the tail, and of course his eye. So just fill that in with the pencil. Don't make it too messy, don't make it too dark, but just make sure that you can see through it when you've actually put your watercolor over the top of it. So the details are almost done here. The next thing that we'll be doing once we've filled in all the detail is grabbing a paintbrush. Still detailing here. It's taken me a while, obviously, to do a few lines. Okay, hopefully we're finished now. We are going to grab some water. Oh, I'm still doing the gills. Goodness, that's taking a while. Underestimated how long it's going to take to do the drawing part. All right, so now is the water part. You paint over the top with a liberal amount. You don't want pools and pools of water, but you want it wet enough to give good coverage. You stick within the circle that you've already drawn, and you also paint over the top of the whale. Don't fear, you want the water and the watercolor to go over that. So this is what I'm doing here, just painting enough water over the top. So when I add my watercolor, we're going to have some lovely dispersion of the watercolor. Still painting, making sure that I get every single area. Now I'm just mainly using blues with this, and I love the way this blue just disperses in that watercolor. It looks fantastic. Really nice. I could watch that all day. Obviously I liked it. I zoomed in on it. Then just dabble the paint just in different areas. I mean, there's no real way of doing this. You can add it however you like. Just remember, don't paint over and over and over again in one particular place with a dry brush, because that is what creates the balls on the paper. So I've selected another blue to add to this just to give it a bit more dimension. And excuse me, some of the water actually spread out, which is not good. So I just quickly pat that up with some tissue. And here I've added some green. So that's quite a bright green, but the end product won't have it that bright. So I've just added a little bit more paint, and then I begin to add a bit of water to it because we want that paint to be able to move around the page. So I lift it up and I very carefully swirl the watercolor around, making sure that I keep within that circle. I've noticed that I've missed some of the watercolour when I covered it in the water. So I've just gone over it with a paintbrush. It's not a big deal. So I'm just spreading the watercolour, and then what I will do is set it down and get ready for the next step. Oh, I can see I've actually missed a little bit more there. You can see that lovely liquid movement. That's exactly what you want. You want it to look like the sea. You want it to flow. You want it to look like it's liquid and it's moving. A close-up, just to show you how all the colours have mixed into each other. And next step. So here I am patting off with the tissue, not all of the pigment, not all of the watercolour, but just some of it, so it's more easily painted over with the grey colour. So I'm just patting off where the whale illustration has been done, the penciled whale, and I'm just dappling above to take some of that excess paint off. Okay, the next thing that I'm going to do is paint the whale. Now, we barely use any watercolour for this, and I recommend not to use a black colour. So use this is kind of like a grey, dark grey colour, and I've just wet my paintbrush and got a bit of pigment off the watercolour pad, and now I turn my paper upside down because I want the dark line to start underneath the belly. I mean, if he was swimming in the sea, the top would be light and the underbelly would be darker. So I just, with minimal paint on my paintbrush, just go along the line of the belly of the whale and very carefully do that. Now, I don't actually do this perfectly, but that's okay. Doesn't have to be perfect. I've covered up the pencil line there, so all is good. So then I get a bit of water and I actually just water down that line that I've done, and it's called pulling, and I pull some of that watercolor down, or actually it's up when you think about it, but I pull that down and I'm just creating shading. And I'm not getting any more watercolour. And pretty much I colour that whole whale in with just that small, I mean, I do add a little bit later on, but you can see that you can colour in that whole whale just with that small amount of watercolour that I traced along his belly. There I am getting a little bit more, adding a little bit more to it. I don't want his fin, I want to keep his fin and his underbelly quite defined, so I kind of leave the fin and let the underbelly dry just a little bit before I paint that fin. I still try, I don't want a clear line, so I get a bit of water and try and break that line down just a little bit. You still don't want to paint over it too much because it will still ball up. So you might need to add a little bit more watercolour, which I have here. But the thing is, you don't want to use much because you still want to be able to see through that whale. You want it to be transparent, so you can kind of see some of the blue coming through the whale as well that you'd already previously painted. This is just filling in the tail now, and I pretty much don't use, look, I don't use too much paint in this part because it's very easy to come out black. So while the top is still wet, I grab a very small amount of ink and just do little tiny dots on top of him. Now, if that was a little bit more watered down, the watercolor, that ink would disperse much nicer. But I mean, I'm still happy with that. So if the wetter it is, the more disbursement will happen. Is that even a word? Anyway, so what I've done here is let him I've let him dry. Sorry about that cough, I've been sick. I've I've let him dry, and I'm getting minimal paint on the end of a fine paintbrush, and I'm actually just detailing just a little bit, and I don't get any more paint on my paintbrush. I just use what I have on there, and you can see it's hardly any, and I'm just detailing under his mouth, just putting those lines in. I very slowly do the lines. I kind of don't want them to cross over, but if they cross over, that's not a big deal. I mean, the way that you trace onto your paper might not have those lines. You can make up a cartoon one if you like. It's totally up to you. I then detail some little lines on the whale's tail, and his eyes being done, and pretty much that's it. Not too much detailing. I mean, the beauty of watercolour is it's so easy to create those shadows, and just watercolour is magic. Watercolour just does amazing things when you mix it with water, obviously. So here is the final piece. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any future videos that I do. See you next time.